and our weekly video segment to take you into the back shelves of your local video store, back where it says horror videos, and where kids are devouring some awful films that we call the video nasties.
Are you freebasing? Inquiring minds want to know.
I have to break free from this culture of mechanical reproductions and the thick incrustations dying on the surface.
Fuck the prime time, bitch!
On with the new flesh.
The pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite. As for our deaths, come with me and be immortal.
We have such sights to show you.
Gotta return some videotapes.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to the It Slays podcast. I'm your humble host, Rowan.
And I'm a rotten chandelier, Mike.
Sorry. It's a fucking salad emporium, Jill.
And we are back for a Patreon episode. It's been a little while since we've done these ones. Colton not with us. He's going to be joining us later tonight because we're recording two at once. And he was a big no to doing two at once. So, unfortunately, he doesn't have that skill, that coordination.
Yeah, that DP.
That's not...
That double feature presentation.
Yeah, and I mean, I've got more faith in Colton. He definitely has the DP on deck. Always Diet
Deborah
Pepsi.
Logan, double feature.
I want to go.
Spoiler alert.
So, if you are interested in picking a movie that we review, here's a reminder how that can happen. You can join our Patreon at the Horror Hound level. I think that level's like, is it like $5, I think, possibly. Mm-hmm. And basically, if you're a member for after 6 months, we will reach out to you and ask you what movie you would like us to pick. And we basically will get it done as soon as possible. And this time, it was Horror Hound member and beloved spouse, Dan, that...
Your spouse?
that chose our film for this evening. And, you know, let's start off with why they chose it. And I think Jill has an answer for us.
Yeah, so I asked Dan earlier why he chose this movie, especially given the fact that I don't mess with possession movies and old people possession movies at all. So I don't know why he chose this, apart from the fact that he said it's one of the scariest horror movies he's ever seen. And that's significant because apparently he's kind of hard to scare. So it's the first movie that he's watched in a while that made him feel scared.
Well. Let's, we're going to discuss whether this was scary or not. But first, let's get into the trailer and we'll get into the synopsis and first experiences.
The story of Alzheimer's is never about one person.
Hey, Mom! They want to make a movie about me, isn't that right?
We're gonna have fun, right?
Yeah, man.
Okay, good. There's no cure. And so when I am in the middle of something and suddenly my mind just leaves the premises, there are no words to describe.
This is not normal sleepwalking. Mom! God!
Oh, you really gave us all quite a fright with your late-night gardening.
If I encouraged this memory to come out, would she then have some peace? Do you remember a man named Henri Desjardins?
Voice changes.
Letting all my heat out.
Self-alteration. Feeling as if your body belongs to someone else.
The notion of spiritual parasites does exist.
Gentle with her!
Whoa, put that
Now I feel right as rain.
2014's The Taking of Deborah Logan, directed by Adam Robitel and written by Adam Robitel and Gavin Heffernan. And the synopsis is as follows. What starts as a poignant medical documentary about Deborah Logan's descent into Alzheimer's disease and her daughter's struggle as caregiver degenerates into a maddening portrayal of dementia at its most frightening, as hair-raising events begin to plague the family and crew, and an unspeakable malevolence threatens to tear the very fabric of sanity from them all. So we know where we're going to start first. Is this our first time seeing this, or is this kind of in our horror canon of classic found footage films? We'll start with you, Mike.
I actually had never seen it before. I mean, I had numerous reasons why I had never seen it. The first one is that I, as a rule, generally am not a fan of found footage movies. I find that, like, when they're done well, they're done really well, but the ones that aren't, like, kind of on the upper echelon, just, it's kind of like all or nothing with me. Like, if it's not really, really, really good, it's bad. And I don't know why. It's one of those things, the aesthetic of it just doesn't appeal to me, and that's probably it, because I love, how I love my horror, like, very candy-coated and, very aesthetized. Anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. So yeah, I'd never seen it because of that, and also because the poster was really ugly. So yeah, this was my first experience with it. I think that if it hadn't been a Patreon pick, I might never, unless somebody else said, let's watch it at a movie night, I probably never would have gone along with it. What about you, Ro?
Yeah, I've never seen this. I've heard of it. I feel like this is always kind of creeps up on random lists. You'll see someone online make like movies that scared them, or just like found footage movies that are done well. And I've said many times on, this podcast, I'm not a big found footage guy. So it doesn't really matter that you would say this is a great one. I wouldn't probably watch it unless forced to. So yeah, I mean, other than knowing, like Mike said, the cover, I didn't have hard feelings like him on the ugliness or beauty of the cover. Yeah, I just, this is something that normally I wouldn't seek out on my own, so I've never seen it. What about you, Jill?
Yeah, I agree that's an ugly-ass cover. And also terrifying. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason why I have never seen this movie. I've avoided it like the plague. I remember my husband watching it, and he said it was really scary. So I was like, fuck that, I'm out. When he was watching it, I went somewhere else. And, it keeps coming up. I keep hearing people say how scary it was for them. So, like I said, I don't do possession movies, especially like old people possession movies. Like, I'm not being ageist or anything, but like getting old is really scary to me. Personally, like physically getting old and also like losing your mind is just very terrifying for me. So I don't know, it just really preys on all my fears. So, it just seemed like it would be uncomfortable. So yeah, I've avoided it until now.
Not the fun kind of scary, right? Like the hitting too close to home kind of scary.
Like rocking back and forth, having a panic attack kind of scary, and never sleeping again. So
it's so funny that you avoided it like the plague, and like actually said to him, I don't want anything to do with this. And then he's like, what am I going to pick for my Patreon?
Yeah, I don't
what
even
am I going to
like,
subject my wife to?
I don't even think that crossed his mind. I think he was just like, oh yeah, I'll choose this one. And, I'm suffering.
And you're sitting there like in the corner, like rocking with your knees up to your chin. Like,
so I don't know what I did to deserve that, but Jesus.
Yeah, that was some karma coming back. As Jojo Siwa recently said, karma's a bitch.
I should have known better.
Well, I mean, let's open the floodgates. Let's open up let's get into the pull-out sofas of it all, because that's what I'm sure Dan will be sleeping on for at least the next week.
Yeah. We just got a pull-out couch, so it's perfect.
Oh, there we go.
It's like you knew.
Yeah, and I sleep so much better alone, just saying.
I wanted to open this up less with the movie than I know, like, Jill briefly discussed before we started recording. But, like, you know, obviously, if you heard the synopsis or you've seen this before, which hopefully you have if you're listening to this review of it, but, like, I'm very curious about, like, not necessarily, I mean, I guess you could say, have you had, like, personal experience, family members with, like, Alzheimer, dementia, or, like, have you, like, experienced it with anyone else, or, like, just, I guess, your general feelings towards it or experience with it? Because I feel like the viewing of this movie, if I was someone that, like, had never really interacted with anyone with Alzheimer's, dementia, like, it might not hit as hard as, you know, if you have that experience. So I'm just curious, like, are both of you, like, do you have something to connect this to?
No, I will say in one respect, I'm lucky in that, you know, I thankfully, knock on wood, haven't had to deal with this in my, like, kind of people in my immediate orbit, but, like, I know people that I'm close with who've dealt with this in the last few years, and, like, when you hear what they have to say about it, it's absolutely terrifying. And it's the sort of thing that, like, when I hear a story from someone and then try to sleep at night, it's all I can think about. So just on that note, like, it's not, you know, that personal to me, but the whole notion, just from knowing people that it's happened to, feels very real. Jill, what do you think?
Yeah. So I have a bit of experience with it. The first thing was, back when I was in high school, we had a take your kids to work day in, like, grade 9. And my mom is a nurse, and sometimes she works in the hospital, and sometimes she works in the seniors home. So I went to work with her when she was working at the seniors home, and she actually worked on the Alzheimer's unit.
Oh, wow.
So I spent the day there with my mom, and she always told me growing up, like, don't be a nurse, like, go become a teacher, whatever, which is what I did. And this day, like, really solidified it for me. So they have this whole unit on lockdown, and we would go in and, like, make the beds and, like, bathe the patients and all that kind of stuff. And it was really scary to me. Like, I was only, like, 15, and my mom went to go get something out of the room, and she was bathing this old lady. I remember I was, like, making the bed, and I look over, and the old lady is, like, naked, and she's walking out of the bathroom, and I'm freaking out. I'm like, what do I do? Like, I'm scared. Like, how do I interact with this person? But thankfully my mom came back. But that is something that has stayed with me since that day. And it really terrifies me, like, being that old and just, like, you know, the lights are on, but no one's really home. It's really sad more than anything. And since that day, I was like, all right, I'm going to be a teacher. But apart from that, my mom's a nurse. She's also a very caring person. Like, she's definitely very nurturing and whatever. So my grandmother, well, when my grandfather died, she didn't want to live alone in her house. So she would, like, spend time breaking up, spending it with different members of my family at their houses. So she would, like, come to our house for a couple of months and then go to my aunt's house for a couple of months or whatever. She was always, like, a really smart lady, like, very curious, always reading and doing puzzles and stuff. And I know dementia especially is, like, something you have to keep your brain active to kind of, like, get it to stay away. So it really shocked me when she started to get dementia and she was, like, living with us. So it was a really hard time in my life, and I don't think I really realized it at the time, except for when I started watching this movie. I was like, wow, like, I definitely have some trauma with that. Because at the time, me and my sister, she was a little kid, but I was a teenager. So we would have to sleep together so that my grandmother could have one of our bedrooms. And that went on for, like, months and years and whatever. So it was really annoying as a teenager not to have, like, my personal privacy or space. So I remember, like, resenting my grandmother for that a little bit. And my little sister, I think, probably resented her for, you know, not having her own room either. So some tensions would build up because of that. And then you can tell that the person with the disease feels like they're a burden on their family, which is really sad and scary about it. And I remember me and my sister would get into fights over it, and my grandmother would be like, I can leave, blah, 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 blah. And it would just feel really bad because you love the person that this is happening to, but so many different things would happen. And just a couple more things that were really scary seeing her go down this really terrible process of dementia, is that she would forget like short-term memory things all the time, but she had a really good long-term memory. So she would tell us things from like, I don't know, 50 years ago, but she would start to she would start to forget who we were. And that was the scariest part, is living with someone who doesn't know who you are and they call you different names, or when it gets really bad, they start to get scared because they don't know who you are. And I remember one Christmas Eve, we all went to bed because, you know, we were going to wake up early and open up presents. And she would not go to bed because she refused to believe that it was nighttime, even though she was sitting in the rocking chair and it was like pitch black outside. We're like, you know, it's time to go to bed. And she would like get aggressive and kind of yell at us and stuff. So we just left her there and went to bed, because what can you do? I remember in the middle of the night, she was just going through the house and like knocking on all the doors and being like, where's everybody? And I don't know, that was really scary. And just like other things, she would just like forget certain things. I remember one of the first things you notice in the movie is the stove is burnt and whatever. I know she would just like put random things in the oven and turn it on sometimes, and you'd be like, oh, there's a cheese grater in the oven, or I don't know, just like little weird quirky things like that. So that kind of stuck out to me, but I just wanted to wrap it up by saying that dementia, Alzheimer's is very scary to me personally, and I feel bad for the people who go through it, because you don't know what they're thinking or feeling. Maybe there's still something left in their memory and they just feel like helpless inside. And also when the movie starts off and it says Alzheimer's is about the people around the person who has it, and, you know, apart from what I just said about the person who has it, maybe knowing that they have it or not knowing at all, it also plays a pretty big role in the lives of the people around the person with it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I also, one of my grandfathers had it, and so I have like a similar experience, but not as like personal as yours, because at the time, like when he was coming down with it and like was really showing signs, I lived away from home, so it wasn't something I was dealing with. I just like, you know, you'd hear stories, and there was times I'd visit home, and with him, it was a lot of kind of what you said, like, he wouldn't necessarily recognize me until someone's like, oh, you know, it's Rowan, and but they also, you know, because their long-term memory's so good, like, even though, you know, I'm this, like, burly, bearded man, like, he would automatically associate me with, like, being, like, 6 years old, and it would be like, oh, like, you know, how was that thing that would be something that happened when I was, like, 6, and he would just automatically assume I was, like, that old, and that, you know, I wasn't, you know, this horrible, disfigured 30-year-old man. And then I also, you know, have an interesting perspective on it from that I do see it a lot at where I work, which is kind of interesting because, you know, unlike somewhere where probably most people's, you know, grandparents that have it would go, like, I'm dealing with people that already have other cognitive issues, so then you add that, like, on top of it, you know, lots of things like you're talking about, Jill, like putting things in random places, but and just, like, you know, creepy things. I also work on overnight, so it's like that's kind of I think they bring up the term in this movie, but like sunrising, I believe is what they call it. But that's kind of what people with dementia and stuff do, like, at night. It seems that a lot of that stuff comes up the later it gets, like, so I know, like, one person I work with, he'll very often, like, come out of his room, stand in a hallway, which is, like, almost completely black. It's only lit by, like, a bathroom. And then he'll kind of, like, stand in the light in the middle of the hall, and then he'll just walk in circles. And he'll just do that until you kind of come up to him and you're like, hey, what's up? And then he'll literally just stare at you blankly. And then he'll just be like, who are you? And then you're like, oh, and then, you know, you're trying to, like, get them back in their room so they're safe and then go back to sleep and stuff. But it's definitely, like, if you're not used to that, like, terrifying.
Yeah.
That is one of the things where I thought this was just, like, a really... You know, we're talking about all these horrible things. I'm like, but this is actually, like, kind of a cool subject matter to tackle in a horror movie because it's already such a horrifying thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, and I've never really seen, I'm sure there's lots of other movies that have, like, kind of tackled this, but, you know, this is the first I've seen, especially in this, like, found footage area. So like I said, because of all those acts being like scary and just out of it's not it's out of the norm, so that's what makes it unsettling. I'm like, what a perfect way to kind of creep this like possession story into this. And I just thought, yeah, it was like a really cool concept to come in with. And I mean, as we discuss further, I'll say whether or not I think it like stuck the landing, but I do think wholeheartedly it has to be said that this is like a pretty cool concept. So I was gonna say too, like to talk about something other than the damnation of dementia for 2 seconds, is I got a little worried when it started, because as I said, I already don't necessarily like found footage, but I was like worried about the quality of the found footage, because I've always kind of felt that as we move up in time and found footage is trying, this isn't like super new, but it's 2014. So we're dealing with like digital cameras, stuff like that. Yeah. And I'm always just like, oh, it kind of just looks like someone making a movie. And like, so I'm not really in the found footage like feel for it. But then as it went, I don't know why I associated it with this, but I kind of bought into it because I was like, the quality to me feels like the really bad documentaries they put on like Discovery Channel. Like they kill the paranormal like documentaries and shows. And I was like, those are very like digitized too. So I just kind of bought, like I finally gave up and bought in with how kind of shiny it looked.
Oh yeah, it's very much like something that they would show you maybe like in a school now or something, I feel like.
That budget.
Yeah.
One of the things for me about the quality of it was the acting of the people who were holding the cameras or whatever. To me, I don't know why, but it really felt like watching a bad porno, and like the acting was very on par with that, I feel, where they're like, oh, I'm so surprised.
Okay, but question because like one of my things about this movie ties into that. Are you using that as like a blanket judgment for all of the acting, or just the like kind of more voiceover?
Just the parts that are found footage sometimes, not all the time, but when they're in the dark and they're looking for Deborah. I feel like that part especially seemed kind of cheesy.
But that's because there's really no good way to do that. Like when you think about it, because it always feels very like contrived, and like I know they're like, oh, the light is on the camera or whatever, so they have to keep picking it up and like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, I'm like, the battery would have died, or like when you fell down, that camera would have smashed. Like, but it's, and I feel like you're maybe right in that sense.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It just kind of cracked me up a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things I always think about, we talked about it more so in like year 1, 2 of the podcast, but Exilia's dreaded cell phones don't work anymore in the in the movie, and her hate for that. Yeah. But like Mike said, like I get it on the fact that it's like you're trying to create this tension, this like chaoticness, but it's like really hard to create that if you're like, oh, all of our cameras and our flashlights and our lights that are really bright that light up the entire place all work perfectly fine. There's not like, so we can see everything, you've got to somehow make it so they can't see and all this. And yeah, I feel like it's one of those things in found footage that you just like, I also like Jill, like that annoys me to no end. It's one of the reasons I don't overly like found footage.
Yeah.
But then of course it's one of those things that you just, you like begrudgingly have to accept. In that.
Yeah, and that's the same why I always have an issue with found footage, is just those aspects of it always just seem very contrived and forced to me.
Yeah, and like I also agree with Jill that I don't know what it is, because I don't think necessarily the acting from like Mia or Sarah or Deborah is like bad.
Oh, I love them.
But for some reason, found footage movies, like when we're getting into like Gavin and I can't remember is it Louis? Is that the other guy's
Louis,
name?
yeah.
name that's like operating the
Luis,
camera.
yeah.
But yeah, like found footage, maybe it's a trope I just don't recognize, that the cameramen, all the technical workers in the movie always are just terrible actors. And like they're never, and I get it, because when you're casting the movie, you're like, oh, you don't really have to do that much. Like, you're just kind of there holding the camera and maybe like going, oh shit, like once or twice. But yeah, they were pretty egregiously
You gotta put your
bad.
whole pussy into it if you're gonna be a background character.
Like Courtney Cox's cameraman in part 1 of Scream. Just saying.
Also, though, Sarah, very, very Jennifer Aniston coded.
Do explain. I'm interested in this.
Is it the hair?
It's the hair,
I
and it's
knew
her
it was the hair,
personality.
yeah.
When she's talking, she's just kind of like laughing with you and just very like bubbly. I don't know.
Okay, so I have a theory about that, because I never thought about that. My first note of this is Anne Ramsey exclamation point, because you know me, my actress. Like,
Yeah.
And I fucking love her so much. Like, I adore her. And one of her most famous roles, this is very like 6 Degrees of Jennifer Aniston, she was the sister on the sitcom Mad About You with Helen Hunt and Paul Reiser, which was also on NBC at the same time as Friends was. So she was actually like a neighbor of Jennifer Aniston on the like sitcom block. So it's funny. It's funny that you made that connection, because she would have like cut her teeth and become famous as a sitcom actress. So you would have to have that same kind of energy.
I'm here
So
for
it's fun. It's just interesting. Yeah. Oh my God.
Jen
Listen,
Aniston, so.
I love when you said the other day, like earlier in the week, and you were like, oh, it's an accidental pride pick. And I was like, what the fuck are you? The taking of Deborah Logan. Like, Jill, are you out of your fucking mind? What are you on? And when I read the description, I was like, no, girl, like, this is what? And then literally as soon as she came on the screen, I was like, this is so lesbian coded before, like, even if like she never was like not explicitly written as a lesbian, I was like, oh, that subtext is there, baby.
Yeah, she's got her lady friend.
Maybe multiples. I feel like she
hit on anything that walked in the movie, I felt.
I can relate.
Listen, I feel like she just has a lot of like women who become infatuated with her and she becomes close with. She's got that personality, like you said, it's very 90s sitcom personality. So,
and I think I got it, but like,
and she's hot. So
I'm assuming that like Deputy Tweed, like Linda, I'm assuming that is the girl from when she was a kid, maybe when she's telling the story about like getting caught with a girl, because like they kind of have a couple conversations the camera picks up about like, hey, like, you know, I'm your friend, I've been your friend, and like whatever's going on. There's obviously a little like arm touching, a little consoling, little more than official police business, if you know what I'm saying.
I think I don't know why, so I think you're right. I didn't actually make the connection to, you know, the person she got caught with, which it probably is, because there's no other older person from that part of her life that comes up. Yeah, I was like, okay, so this is clearly not the same person that, you know, she's like kind of seeing right now. Because it does seem that there's some physical distance there, but this is somebody that she obviously has a history with.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, girl, you got a woman in every port, as they say.
As they say.
She's got the Porto pussy. No, cut that out.
Never.
That should be a Newfoundland town name for sure.
Oh my God.
Porta pussy.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking. It's very, very hair coded.
Oh my God.
Right, it'd be right next to dildo.
That's gonna be my new gay bar name in St. John's. Porta pussy.
With Sarah, like, did you guys ever feel that she was like kind of a red herring in this at all? I felt like towards the beginning, maybe like, you know, I guess I was definitely in the vibe of this, so I was kind of like really looking for like, oh, let's, you know, what are some creepy signs I'm looking for? And like, because at first I was like, oh, is this gonna be like a switch and bait with like what I think it, you know, the title of it and everything, where like Sarah is gonna actually be like the evil one or stuff, because like they set her up as like the drunk, and like sometimes she'll just do like weird uncomfortable looks into the camera, and I'm like, I don't know if that's because she's awkward about it, or she's drunk, or like what it is, or both, or is like, you know, or is she a little possessed or something evil going on there? Which, you know, isn't the case at all. And, you know, like I said, it might have just been me looking too hard for clues, but I was just like, oh, maybe like a little red herring here or something.
No, but that's interesting. That never occurred to me at all, but I think that what is happening to you when you're watching this movie is something that actually really annoys me about the way that, like, contemporary, or well, for the last couple decades, movies and books in particular are marketed, in that you are now, like, trained to be like, there's gonna be a twist. So you're maybe subconsciously like looking for that as you're watching the movie, whereas like, you know, like when Scream came out, it wouldn't have been like standard for there to always be a like crazy twist, or like 5 of them, you know what I mean? You know, it's like there's a reveal, but it's not, but now it's always like, oh, there's twists and turns, and you know, I mean, obviously every narrative has twists and turns, but you know what I mean? It's sort of like, don't give away the twist. Like it's very much like Psycho, but like every movie is like that now. You know, and I feel like that's just sort of like a symptom of that. And I actually find it really annoying in a way, because I do it myself. And I can never like watch a thriller, or like read a thriller, or like watch a mystery or anything like that. But I like keep having to catch myself. I'm like, stop it. You're thinking too much about like what the twist is going to be, or, you know, like you're just really looking for like the smallest hints in everything, that like things aren't what they seem. And like, I just wish I could. And I wish this for all of us, like, just take things at face value and ride the narrative.
Yeah,
without being too critical of it in terms of, like, trying to figure out what the plot is.
Preach.
I don't know. That's just my 2 cents of, like, I feel like we're just, like, our brains are a bit broken because of movie marketing.
Yeah, well, I don't have very many brain cells, so that thought never occurred to me. That she was a red herring, so...
I mean, me either. Me and Jill are both just like, we've killed our brain cells using two different areas. But anyway.
We shared like a single brain cell.
Oh yeah, it's not very functional either.
No. This doctor that they have from Quebec, Henry, and they gave him a Spanish last name instead of saying Desjardins, which is the French way to say it.
I know. I was like, why are they pronouncing it like that? I was like, Dewey, what? Like,
so, I don't know how they said it, but it was wrong.
It was Desjardins or something, and I was like, who? Why do all Americans mispronounce French names?
Yeah, they don't have that core French initiative.
Oh my god, look, it's A24 fanboy.
Yeah, all the listeners
in the house
can find out that we just have the drop-in from Colton shows up.
Yeah.
Did you even watch this movie?
Should I be recording? Or no, I didn't watch this movie. I figured you guys would be done recording by now. It's time to talk about Belladonna's sadness.
We did a lot of
bullshitting.
Well, you know us, we were bullshitting
and setting up.
You know how we are.
All right.
We'll probably be a little bit.
Bounce? Gonna be a while?
We're gonna blow through this. It's
yeah.
I can't see this being more than 20 minutes.
Okay. Goodbye.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Oh, thank God.
I will say, for found footage, I thought the gore in this was actually pretty good. Because usually found footage uses gore sparingly. Which is understandable, because, like, when you're filming it to look like just a normal video camera, sometimes they are just using a normal video camera. It's hard to do, like, any special effects or anything.
Yeah.
But, like, I was very surprised, because I come in to all found footage, like, you know, it's going to be some jump scares, stuff like that, but, like, lots of peeling of the skin that I thought looked pretty good.
When she's scratching her arm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it starts gushing blood. It looks so good.
Yeah, I was just, like, very impressed with this.
Yeah, and it's like, there was a few times, because, I mean, there were so many things that kept happening, obviously, and that's part of the horror, but, yeah, there were definitely, like, a number of those, like, incidents, I guess I'll call them, that I thought, oh, that's not the type of gory moment that I was expecting right now, so it kind of like startled me, which says something about the movie because I'm highly unstartleable these days.
For sure. And like the special effects on the gradual degradation of Deborah, really good. Like her very receding hairline, and they make her hair lighter, her eyebrows like kind of disappear, and her skin gets really wrinkly, and all the makeup and stuff. They do a really good job of making her terrifying, especially in the dark as well.
No, for sure. And like the interesting thing about that makeup is that they still retain, like, it's getting progressively like, and you know, you hate to say it's scary looking because, you know, then that implies that like the breakdown of, you know, your face as you age is scary. In a way it is, but also like, I mean, it's a horror movie, so it's meant to be scary. So, but they did that while still keeping her very recognizably her, so that when she was having her like lucid moments or somewhat lucid moments, you really felt like, oh my God, she's here and she's present. And it made her less like monstrous, you know what I mean? And it was, to me, that gave the movie a little bit more power, because it's like, no matter how many, even after like 10 awful things have happened right in a row, and then she has that moment and it's like she's covered in blood, but like they didn't totally like make her like, just like, it didn't totally lose her personality. Like you can still see that it's this woman, and that's what's so terrifying about it.
Yeah. You like still have empathy for her.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, she's still the woman that we saw in the garden at the beginning, you know?
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with Jill Larson. I'm not familiar other than seeing her like on the posters of this that played Deborah, but
yeah,
I mean, I'm sure it's a big deal for, I don't know, somebody's grandparents. I saw like she was on All My Children for like 14 years or something since the 80s. So like apparently she's like some big soap opera star.
Interesting.
I mean, I was not a soap person, so I literally had never heard of her before this movie, but holy shit, like she's good. And I mean, I know, and like, listen, people obviously give like bad raps to like people in soaps all the time in terms of their acting ability, but like, she fucking carried this movie, man. Like,
yeah, well, and just like not even having to like slowly show the progression of a possession, but then also mix in the slow progression of dementia in with that and Alzheimer's. Like,
it's very layered.
Yeah, like it's super layered, complicated role that, like, I feel like if someone was like, hey, you're gonna watch this movie, this is what it's about, and it stars some woman that was basically only been on a soap opera for 14 years, most people would be like, all right, this is gonna be
garbage. Yeah.
They're like, wait a second, is this a Tubi original or what's going on here?
I did watch it on Tubi.
So did I.
Oh, me too.
Just to make that clear.
Gotta love them ad breaks too.
Yeah, you guys are acting like that's necessarily a diss. I wouldn't say it's a diss.
No, we love Tubi.
Yeah.
Tubi, like, please sponsor us. I'm going to be watching movies on Tubi tonight with my friend for, you know, the holiday tomorrow. But like, it's the type of role that like easily could have just tipped over into this like mostly one note, like, you know, Jack Nicholson in The Shining. Like, I'm not saying this as a diss, but like, sort of, they're like, we're not gonna kind of give it levels.
Yeah.
And like, man, like she carries it. She really does. And I was very surprised and impressed. I was not surprised and impressed, or I was impressed. I was not surprised by Anne Ramsey, my queen. I love her. A League of Their Own forever.
I've never seen that.
Oh my God, it's a fucking classic. It's one of the only Tom Hanks movies that I love. Mostly because Madonna is in it.
I don't have like an all positive thing to say about this. I really did feel that, like I said, I love this concept. I love this idea. I did love a lot of the execution, but I really felt they kind of let go, or that thread kind of just, they lost it in the third act. I feel like the more they amped up the story, where like, well, now, you know, there's this true crime story going on about, you know, this this child killer, and he's the relation to the people he has to the people in the town and Deborah, and then there's also just the possession stuff just gets like super wild, where then it turns into like, oh, and now he's trying to take a child from the hospital and all this stuff, and I just felt like the wilder it got, I started to kind of get out of it a little bit, where I was like, I feel like if you almost took this, which could be dangerous, but I felt if you almost took it like uber serious, where you don't know, even at the end of the movie, like what is the dimension, what is the possession, and like what is that fine line, and like just read that the entire time. But like this, realistically, in the third, we just kind of get rid of all the dementia stuff, and then it's like, all right, well
the nuance and subtlety kind of literally goes out the nailed shut window.
And it's like, okay, Deborah is basically just this guy that they murdered now, and I was like, this is like a little silly now. And
it loses its efficacy, and it also makes it cheesy and less scary that way. I agree. It would have been better if it was just a movie about like, is she possessed, or focusing more on the dementia aspect of it. Yeah,
I liked the like, I guess, second third of the movie, the like middle third, where they were kind of riding the line between, okay, so clear, I mean, obviously going in that, this is not going to be just dementia, that it's going to be possession or something like that. So you kind of get these hints of supernatural, but then when they do introduce the true crime element, and it's kind of like, okay, we're riding a line here, and maybe it actually is, maybe the supernatural stuff is going to be a red herring instead of the daughter. And I actually really, really, really enjoyed that part of the storyline. And the like decades old serial killer mystery. And I was really hoping that the supernatural stuff was going to be a bit of a fake out, and they were going to kind of go a different route with it. So
that'd be cool.
Yeah, by the time, like snakes were coming out of things and everything, I was like, okay, this is not where I thought it was going. And, we're kind of jumping the shark a little bit, but it's up to that point, I was really kind of riding that wave.
Now, I mean, I talk all this junk, but I mean, definitely we have to briefly talk about what I think's like the iconic scene to everyone for this film, which is like kind of in the finale of Deborah unhinging her jaw and attempting to swallow a child whole, which I thought still looked really good. This definitely could get
it looked way better than it should have, honestly.
And as silly as this started to get and stuff, I was like, oh, this is actually like they did a pretty good job of making this like a horrific moment. Like, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And like, I thought this was like, what a scene. I was like, what a scene to make like your movie just kind of stick with people and be like memorable, even if only for that one thing. Because I haven't seen a demon or anyone swallow someone that good since Freddy. So
Freddy, I knew it. Yeah. Of course. Yeah, it's like literally when they were kind of like coming up on it with the camera, I was like, oh my God, and like it like genuinely like kind of startled me. And then as it was closing in, I was like, oh no, don't get closer, this is gonna look like garbage. And then they got closer up to it, and I was like, wait, no, this is actually well done. I'm very surprised. So now it's definitely gonna stick with me for quite a while. It's even though that last act is just
wacky,
way like unhinged and kind of compromises the rest of the movie. That is like a very startling image, and I think they knew that, and they kind of like kept that card for last.
So if that's everything we've got, why don't we land the plane and rate this bad boy? So if you're new to the program, our rating system is nay, okay, yay, or slay. Jill, we're landing on you first to see how angry you are at Dan for making you watch this. What would you give The Taking of Deborah Logan?
Okay, this isn't something that I would put on for myself because It's too scary. And actually, I'm not going to lie to you. A lot of the time I was watching this, I was watching it in my peripherals. Like, I was sitting sideways towards the screen and watching it in my peripherals at like the very tense moments so that I could sleep. So I didn't get the full effect, but also I'm not that big of a masochist. So, well, I would be a sadist. But anyways, yeah. So I'm going to give The Taking of Deborah Logan an okay, because it's not really my type of movie. I think it is really scary. It does a good job of being terrifying and uncomfortable, and I think the dementia storyline is very good. But like we kind of talked about, it does lose its kind of shine for me in that third act where it gets kind of silly and convoluted and too much for me. So if they really just reined that back, it could have been like a yay. But because of that, it's just going to be an okay for me. But still very scary. Good watch. Good concept. What about you, Mike?
I'm actually going to give it a yay. As I said at the beginning of the episode, this is not normally a genre that is my cup of tea. Listen, it obviously in that last act, like we all agree that it's sort of, except for one or two little like brief shots and stuff, it sort of just falls apart a little bit and becomes the kind of standard shaky camera chasing, can't see what's happening chaos. But up until then, I found that the acting, the women particularly, the ones in front of the camera, to be way stronger than it usually is in found footage. There were some really good scares and really good moments that actually like unsettled me. Like I said, the gore was well done. I really enjoyed the story beats up until essentially they went to the like cave system. I just found that, of course, it's just, it just fell apart for me there. It was just too much. But like when they were kind of like peeling back the layers of like the serial killer story and how Sarah was almost victimized and, like the switchboard, I just thought all that was really cool. And maybe it would have made a better like thriller that masquerades as something that's going to turn into supernatural. But I really did enjoy it. I'm never going to probably watch it again unless somebody, wants to or whatever. But like, I do not regret my viewing of this. I actually enjoyed myself for the most part. So yeah, it's a total yay. Ro, are you going to slay it? Are you gonna nay it?
I know. I think I'm coming in exactly where you are. I'm gonna give it a yay also, and it's everything you said, right? This is not my genre that I typically like, and I had a pretty good time with this. Like I said, even the third act where I thought it lost, the thread there. They kind of won me back with like that iconic child eating scene, and this kind of movie that I've been passing on all these years that I know everyone has this love for and affection for, the chance that I saw it and then it had a moment where I'm like, what the fuck? Like, that makes me happy. I'm like, that's what I want. I want at least one, like, what the fuck moment. And I got it in this, and yeah, even, like I said, I just like you, Mike, I prefer that kind of first half, middle half, and I just loved what they did, with how scary Alzheimer's dementia is, and as well, how scary possession, I guess, could be also. So yeah, I'm going to give it a yay, so 2 yays and an okay. I think that's going to average out exactly where it needs to be. So if you're not following us on social media, you can do so at It Slays Podcast pretty much everywhere. We're on Facebook, Instagram, X, Slasher, Tumblr, Bluesky, Threads. Pretty much if there is a social media, we're on it at It Slays Podcast. And Jill, do you want to let them know one more time where they can find the Patreon?
If you want to be like our incredible horror hounds, Holly, Nicholas, Patrick, Sacritype, Mark, Joy, Dan, Brian, Trevor, and James, head on over to patreon.com/itslays podcast and choose the tier that works best for you. So you can get access to the main show 48 hours in advance, access to our side show, Stream Screams, hosted by Rowan and I, where we review Creepshow episodes and Tubi movies. And at the Horror Hound tier, you can get a shout out every episode, as well as the ability to choose your own flick for us to review if you've been subscribed for 6 months. So what are you waiting for? Go check it out.
And if you're into spooky music, you can go on over to Spotify to the It Slays podcast horrific playlist. If you have any problems finding it, you can go to any of the social media I mentioned before. Go into the bio, click the Linktree link. It'll take you directly there. We upload scores or licensed music from iconic horror movies we review, or just horror movies we love. So yeah, go follow the playlist and get your spooky music on, because why the hell not? And that'll be everything. We'll be back when you're listening to this. I think we'll be back the next week after this. So yeah, as always, thank you for all the support. Thank you to Dan for supporting us. I am your humble host, Rowan.
Bye, it's Mike.
And bye, it's Jill.
See you later.